Welcome to episode 286 of the Center Ring Esports Podcast presented by Alt. This is going to be the best episode ever because we have a lot of esports to get to, a lot of important esports to get to. First Strike has started their next closed qualifier stage, and groups A and B, maybe? Two groups started today. We'll figure out which ones those were later in the show and discuss the matchups there. And Blast has finished up their group C, and we'll talk about that. Nico, MIBR, all that fun stuff you need to know. And of course, a very light e-news to get to at the end. But before we get to any of that, let's tell you about the show sponsor in Alt, ULT, altesports.com. It's your one-stop shop for the best esports apparel that money can buy. In fact, Black Friday has started early for Alt. You can go to altesports.com and pick up any of the collections from the Overwatch League or Call of Duty League and get an instant 40% off. Feeling about repping the Dallas Fuel, Dallas Empire, or whoever? Pick up the LA Optic collector's item right now. Chicago Huntsman, maybe a collector's item. Who knows? You can pick that up 40% off, altesports.com.
Hey, this is Jeff from the Overwatch team. You're here listening to the Center Ring.
Okay, so let's start.
Hello, everybody. Hello and welcome. Welcome back to another edition of The Center Ring, aka TCR, aka your favorite esports podcast, presented by Alt. This is episode 286, coming to you live and or pre-recorded from an undisclosed location. The date, November 4th, 2020. The time is 8:54 p.m., and we are officially in the second day of a presidential election. Go ahead and follow us on Twitter at The Center Ring. Join the Discord, be a part of all the news there, and chat with the listeners. Taking ideas, categories, and nominees for the Timmies, our esports award show later on in the year, and you can drop those in chat there as well. People are discussing options and things like that. And all that fun stuff. My name is Tim. I'll be your captain for this journey into esports. And alongside me, as always, is my best friend, my brown friend. It's Anuj. What's up?
How late were you up last night, bud? Because I feel like I have been looking at a screen for about 24 hours straight now, whether it's for work or TV. Like, my eyes have just been glued to a screen. But
I went to bed normal time, but my normal time is like 1:30.
See, I was up till like 1:30, which is like well beyond my normal time.
Yeah, I stay up pretty late. I don't recommend it because I'm also miserable in the morning, but you know, it's what you do. Yeah, it's been interesting. Way too long in my opinion. Like, we definitely need some days off of work for this. I don't think it's fair.
I feel like election day should just be a day off.
It happens once every 4 years.
Yeah.
You can't give us one extra day.
Give us that. The World Cup finals should be, it's like anything that's like every 4 years, should be like celebrated a little bit more.
For every gold medal USA wins at the Olympics, we should get an extra day off.
I had a tough time sleeping yesterday because I was just so curious, right? Like, it's like, oh my gosh, we don't really have any sort of clear-cut answer here. It swayed back and forth so
early
much,
on,
right? It was like really looked bad early for Biden, and then Biden kind of started making a run later throughout the night. But it was you know what? It's everything that the last year has been. It was a roller coaster.
As soon as they said, like, for the 100th time that it wasn't going to be decided that night, I flipped on a movie. I was like, okay, I'll stay updated on Twitter and stuff. I don't need to watch it anymore. Thank you. Yeah, no, it's been It's been entertaining. It's been entertaining. Like I said, if I could, I would have paid good money to be a fly on a wall in certain people's household the moment Trump took Florida. Cause, fun fact, and I heard this, maybe this isn't right. Maybe I'm making up lies. Maybe I'm making up fake news. The last 6 presidents that have won Florida. I mean, that seems right.
Yeah, probably. I mean, I'm going to trust you on that.
Yeah, I mean, all right, I'm the official political correspondent of the Center Ring. We are in trouble, but I think I heard that. So, there you have it.
It's coming down to the wire. It's coming down to the wire.
Hopefully we know tomorrow. Just let me know tomorrow, because I cannot go another day of just
Nevada and Pennsylvania. We need y'all to pick it up a little bit. Let's get some of these votes out. Nevada, I don't know.
What else are you doing? Right?
Yeah, like let's count. You
can't go anywhere. COVID's everywhere still. Just shoot up a Red Bull, all right? Take some of those drugs that Oregon just decriminalized and legalized. Send those to Nevada, hit it up, and just Adderall it through the night and count these votes. So we'll see. By the time we do our next show, we will have our new president. So hopefully everyone is having a riveting presidential election, and hopefully this show is taking you away from it mentally just for a little bit. Because if you're like me, sometimes you just need a break. Sometimes you need a break. Shout out Jeff from the Overwatch team. Happy birthday. Friend of the show. Super nice guy. I actually thought about him the other day. So as we're watching the presidential election, they throw in Pennsylvania and Philadelphia. And I don't know why he popped up in my head, but I told my wife when we met him in Philly and how he actually remembered who I was the following night. And I felt really good about that.
We felt special in that moment, you know?
Yeah, like the fact that he stopped down talking to like the president of Blizzard to say hi to us again was like, yeah, what's up? Never did come on the show, though. Never did come on the show.
He's busy.
Is he, though? I
think
Let's play a game.
Right now.
What happens first? We figure out who the next president is, or Overwatch 2 comes out? We have recently hit the 1-year mark of the announcement of Overwatch 2. So
I saw a picture of us posted today on Facebook, Facebook memories. You know how they give you flashbacks and whatnot. You and me last year, we were taking that photo with our good friends over at Amuka, the jerseys that they had given us. And so we had our jerseys on, getting the photo op done. And I was like, oh man, I was showing that to Kelly today. I was like, shit, that's, again, I know we just talked about it last week, but it still blows my mind that it was a year ago.
Yeah, BlizzCon feels like forever ago that we actually got to do anything. So, but it is what it is. Everyone's in the same boat. We're not alone here. Let's get into some of our discussion, though, because for those who remember last week, this is going to be our only episode for this week. Well, I guess until next week. So your sister is getting married, and as you told me, Indians do a lot for weddings, and you will be busy from now until next Wednesday. So we will not have a show on Monday for you. Anuj is out, and I'm going to take advantage of just having a block of days that I can just actually unplug my computer and not feel like I'm missing out on anything to redo my office. You will hopefully, by next week, not see my table of scraps and messes behind me.
Your fun table over there.
It's, well, it was like where I was like doing arts and crafts and things like that, and then it just quickly turned into throw my shit on that table. So we'll see. I'm more excited for next week over the wedding, just to see what your new setup looks like. I mean, it's just going to be me rotating my desk. Don't get your hopes up too much.
No,
I might get a new monitor. We'll see. I'm waiting for those 3080s to become available before I really go with the new setup. That's what I'm waiting for. Once I get the 3080, then the next dominoes fall, and it's cake from there. So, but I've had to wait. Like I said, I've wanted to redo my office, but working from home has created a multiple dilemma. is that I kind of always need my office now. Like, you kind of always have to have a clean setup so you can work. And then, like, on the weekend rolls around, and I'm like, well, I don't want to unplug my computer because this is the one night a week I get to game.
Yeah.
And so I know if you're busy, I won't feel bad, like, when you text me and be like, you want to play some Valorant?
You're gonna get on. You quickly plug it back in.
Yeah, I
just throw it
plug
in the
everything
corner.
back in and I play on the floor. So, now, so long story short, no show on Monday. We'll be back next week. So, there's that for you. So let's get into some of the actions and happenings going on today, though, because we did have. Let's start. You want to start Valorant?
Yeah, let's do that.
All right. Let's talk some Valorant here because we did have the first strike close qualifiers start. You had Group A and Group B start. Group C and D, they will both start tomorrow. But so far, predictions are looking pretty solid right now. We'll start with Group A. You did have Cloud9 versus Exet, is how they were saying it on stream. I still think it's Exit. Why would you not have it Exit?
I mean, exit makes more sense when you said it, but I would have initially said exit just because I did not see that. But once you said it, I was like, oh yeah, that'd be like a clever way of doing it.
Exit? We're just
Yeah.
am I overthinking esports right now? Like, are we getting
Let's just call them former phase.
former phase? They played off against the boy team for Cloud9, losing 2-0. But now I will say this for the both matches in Group A to start: Cloud9 and Exet, 100 Thieves and Luminosity, both 2-0s. At the start, though, a little nervous. You know, I was working. I had this on the second monitor. I was looking at the scoreboard, and I was like, oh, snap. You know, this is only, it's 4-4. It's you know, on Bind, it was 4-4 with 100 Thieves and Luminosity. And then even for Cloud9, I think that first map was pretty close as well on Bind for a little bit. And then all of a
Yeah,
sudden,
it was
it's
like
like
4-4-3 at one point.
right. But then from there, even like the second map wasn't even close for either one of them.
No, yeah, Cloud9 steamrolled them 13-5 on both maps. You know, they eventually took control. You know, again, we talk about relics. I feel, or not relics, tens every week.
Either
but
one. Relics
Yeah.
and tens.
Relics went nuts in the first game for him on Bind, dropping 27, and just like, again, he was one of those players that in Counter-Strike was the same way in the sense he had the ability to like frag, right? We saw him play in a lot of tier 1 competition, and it's carried over, like consistency wise has carried over so nicely for him because he's alongside of tens, like I look at him as more the Robin in that scenario, but what a great second option to have. He has the carry ability, and he does it in their first map for him. I mean, he really showed up.
Yeah, and I think that's why I think for what why you said with Relics is impressive is tens is like was the opposite, right? We saw him in Counter-Strike. He was supposed to be the next Stewie 2K for Cloud9. He was supposed to be that young prodigy that rose up, and you know, multiple circumstances we'll say. That's
He wasn't
also
surrounded by the same talent that Stewie was.
right. That's what I was about to say is when he entered in Cloud9, there was a lot to be asked of him.
Yeah.
That's when they were really struggling. It wasn't like they snuck him in there with Skadoodle and things like that. It was like the team was already collapsing at that point, and then they tried shoving him in there as the plane was going down to save it. So, not same circumstances. The fact now that we saw him stick with Cloud9 obviously says a lot about the org, but now that he's like kind of the centerpiece of the roster, it is kind of relief just as a Cloud9 fan to be like, okay, like this guy was legit the whole time, and he is legit still. The only thing that makes me nervous, and he's not a one-trick Jet anymore. You know, he played Reyna on Bind, but the one thing that does make me nervous is that he does dominate on Jet. So he's like one nerf away.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like he would be able to adapt, right, to another character. Like, there's plenty of duelists out there from him to choose from. But yeah, on Jet, he really is on another level. Like on her, the way he uses her is just it's something else. And you're right about Cloud9, like them sticking with Tens and giving him this opportunity to play on the Valorant squad after a lackluster performance again on the Counter Strike side, but there's so many factors there. Like he was not just the problem on that team. He wasn't performing well. I think what will be interesting in Valorant is to see how a lot of this talent that we're seeing now, these guys didn't make it in Counter Strike because they didn't perform well on LAN, right? Like they were
Mhm.
all pretty good in the online era of their gaming. That's how they worked their way up, and it's a comfort level. They've but in a LAN situation, they didn't really shine. So I am curious to see, when this goes to LAN, if these same names are still the top dogs when it comes to being in a crowded environment and
You
a
know,
different type of pressure.
I would like to think so. I think a lot of it is confidence wise, and if you're dominating online, then it's going to be easier to convince yourself at LAN, like, hey, I can still do this. I think for a lot of these guys too, when they were in Counter Strike, they were the tier 2 guy moving up to tier 1 or possibly trying to make a tier 2 roster go to tier 1 status, and they were always going to be the first to blame in that sense, right? Like for a lot of these guys, they were either old, I don't want to say washed up players, but past their prime in Counter-Strike, or young guns coming into it. And so if there was a one person to get blamed first, it was always going to be them, right?
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
and so I think that,
You see that with a lot of like that was MIBR's thing for a long
yeah, a
time.
long
That
time.
was FaZe's thing for a long time. Like you kind of just dump that fifth player. So it's not like an NA thing in that sense. But yeah, a lot of these guys were the first to get blame, or they were just a new addition most of the time,
Yeah.
right? So it was just kind of the position you're put in.
And like, there's no history with Valorant, right? I I don't care what anyone says. I don't care who you are. If you are a Mountain Dew League player going into playing on a tier 1 team for Counter Strike, I don't care how good you thought you were in rank S or whatever. When you go to a LAN and you look across the stage and you see you're playing FaZe at that, thinking back at that time, would have been Olafmeister, Guardian, uh,
Nico.
Nico. Like, there is no way you're going to just kind of keep the same composure that you had online. Like, the crowd might have not even been the thing, right? It could have been that you've been like mind fucked that you're across the stage from like these pros where online you can
Some
kind
of the
of hide
greatest players
behind
of
it.
our time.
Yeah. So I think that also helps with Valorant. There's no history right now. The history is like Tens and Relics are like top 5 players in map
Everyone's
1.
going to go in with a ton of confidence, right? Because everyone right now has the belief that, like Wardell and these guys, like
Yeah.
they all think they're the best, right? And so it is going to be fascinating to see, like, if somebody slips early on in LAN, like how does that affect their mental game?
Yeah. I will also say too, just a quick shout out to stats here. Bind was map number 1 for Cloud9 versus Xset.
Mhm.
Relics positive 17, ADR 245.
That's insane. And that is like you are putting in work every single round. I mean that's a crazy stat line.
Yeah, 245. That's insane. Looking over here then to some of the other matches that happened. On the other side, we did have 100 Thieves versus Luminosity. We talked about them last time, that they were one of those teams that we wanted to kind of, set form and put both feet down to kind of play for it. And yeah, you went 2-0 against Luminosity, so I guess you did.
Man, you smacked Luminosity
Yeah.
13-5 and 13-2. Like those are some beat downs, and it's good to see that because Luminosity is not a bad team. And I think 100 Thieves is still like so new that it's nice for them to get a good win early on in this tournament, not have to work into losers, and it can really be like a mental game in that sense if you drop down early. And so, Asuna, their new addition, carried. In the first map, had very Relic like stats. Right, Relic had 27 kills, Asuna had 26, another ADR of over 200. So really putting in work as the new addition there, and that's great to see for them. And then on Ascent, Tim 13-2, like that's not much to be said in that type of outing.
No, and I feel like Ascent, they started out on what? Offense? Yes.
Yeah, they started on offense.
Can I say something? Okay. I know Riot has now changed it where the team is always the same color, no matter what. Right? That was in this recent patch. I never got confused with that. And now I'm confused because I don't know which one it is as I'm watching. And I will also say this because I watched a lot of Valorant today. And Counter-Strike, right? Because I was watching Blast and this, okay? Riot, you stole everything. Well, not everything. You stole most of your ideas from Counter-Strike. Can we just steal the spectator UI as well, please? My eyes are trained to look to the sides. I want to look left and right for stats. And I don't get anything in Valorant, and it makes it very difficult to watch.
You know, and maybe we'll talk about this when we get to Blast Pro, but Blast Pro to me is the perfect visualization. I mean, it's just so perfect. It really is. You get all the information you need in the spots where it feels right. It feels like they belong there. And you're right, with Valorant, that needs a little bit of work. It still looks choppy. I'm still confused when ultimates are up. There's just so many better ways to. I know you can see them highlighted, but it's such a light distinction.
It's just
sometimes
again, you're
that
just
it's
looking
hard to
all
tell.
over. It's just
Yeah.
I realized that today, and maybe you're right because Blast to me again, yeah, like you said, Blast to me is the perfect UI. Which is funny because they were the absolute worst when they first started. How they had all the glitches and everything with theirs. It was terrible.
Yeah, I always liked their color scheme. I always
Yeah.
thought they had that down, and now they're
polished it
so
up.
good at it. It's really impressive.
Group B, this is the one where I thought was interesting because we actually had different opinions. Gen G ended up defeating Equinox 2-1. Got anything there?
I mean, Equinox is ranked top 10 right now, but no, I don't have I didn't get a chance to watch this game. Frankly speaking, looks like they had some good matchups. We had an overtime game on Ascent. Overall though, I think that's what we would think was going to happen in that scenario.
I was too busy watching T1 versus Complexity because to me this was the marquee matchup of the day for multiple reasons. I'm interested to see where Complexity's Valorant roster is. They're ranked, I think, last I looked on the Spike was 15th, 16th in the world.
Yeah.
Which was the lowest of the teams in the closed qualifiers, apart from the no orgs and things like that. But for being a big org, one of the lower ranked teams, so I was curious on that. And also because I think T1 is severely overrated in the sense of, and I think that's more of a fan thing. I think fans love T1 because A, the org, but B, because the players on the roster. So they're just still in the honeymoon phase of the iBuyPower boys are back and everything's going to work out.
People are rooting for it to work out, right? You want it to work out. I would think most people do.
Yeah.
I don't know why you wouldn't, but most people I feel would want T1 to be successful.
I feel like I've turned the corner. When I saw Brax, I saw Skadoodle, I was super hyped. And now, for whatever reason, I get enjoyment.
It's because they added Days, and you don't like Days, so now you can't root for them anymore.
Who's to say?
You like Skadoodle.
Who's
you
to
like
say?
Brax. You it shouldn't have a problem with AZK. He played your beloved Overwatch, and can't have too many issues with him. So the only oddball out here is Days, and I know you just are not
I don't
a
like
fan.
Spider changed his name.
Well,
From Overwatch to another game, just stick with your name. You're right. Dazed does bother me, even though Dazed had some crazy plays on Ascent. But besides that, they still ended up going 2-0 against Complexity.
0-2.
0-2. Correct.
Yeah.
They lost. They got 0 wins. Complexity got 2. Yikes. I feel like this was one where for T1, you didn't necessarily have to win. They did go to overtime, but you definitely needed to take a map just for a confidence sake. Just to build up some confidence. You had an ugly round going into closed qualifiers. You made it to closed qualifiers, so I guess that's something to hang your hat on. But for me, this was one team that I said, what T1 are we going to get? Are we going to get the one that we all expect to be this top tier NA roster, or are we going to get this roster that almost just looks a little confused and discombobulated? And I think it leaned more towards that side. But getting swept by Complexity is not a good look.
I agree. I think it's a little bit more concerning because Complexity, although ranked 15th, which is a fine ranking, no issues there in that sense, but Complexity hasn't really had the ability to beat any of the top teams yet. They've had a bad, rough time against Envy. I think they've went head to head against them like now 3 separate occasions, lost all 3. They played Cloud9, I believe, a couple of times. They haven't been able to pull off those matches. Had a tough time. They went 0-2 against Anbox. I think their only really big win was against NRG, but NRG was so new at the time, so you kind of take that with a grain of salt. So for me, that's why this is a tough loss for T1 because it is a little bit of a good measuring stick, right? Like T1 has also had a tough time against higher ranked teams. Like they just haven't been able to beat them, and so this is going to be one they have to kind of look at and not reevaluate because it's still early. Like they need to give this time. But you're right. You're starting to feel a little concerned of like, man, maybe they are a little overrated, right? Like they're not. Skadoodle played great today. Like that's always a positive, right? When he's putting up 25 plus on a map, he actually played well in both games. They couldn't find a way to win, right? You take Bind into overtime. You put yourself in position to win. You give that up, and Ascent again another close map, but they really couldn't do anything on the defensive side. They looked fine on offense. Defensively, it was poor, and like maybe that's we see Cypher playing right. Like now, maybe is that an effect of what Cypher's recently been nerfed? Like, is it hurting them a little bit in that scenario? We don't know. The meta hasn't really been defined yet, but yeah, they didn't find a way to win, and that's the storyline is they've continued to lose big games.
Now on the bright side, this is just final now. They had beat Equinox Esports 2-0, so now they've at least moved on the loser side. A little redemption on Ascent because they started out on defense and absolutely obliterated them, going 10-2 on the first side of it on defense. So at least they figured it out there. Now, wherever you place Complexity versus Equinox, maybe T1 was starting cold. Who knows? We'll have to see. Speaking of the meta, though, you brought that up. Now, this is, of course, like you said, way early, a couple days after the patch, so maybe teams are just sticking with what they know and they haven't had time to theorycraft. I am a little surprised, though, by, like, you are still seeing Cypher be a main pick. Now, the way they've played him, I've even realized has changed a little bit. You can't be as much of a lurker anymore because now if you die, you lose your the traps and all that information, right? I don't think you necessarily care about the traps as much as you do about the information. But people are still picking him on, I mean, pretty much every time.
I think what we may end up seeing is I don't think this becomes like a shift to Killjoy all of a sudden. Because I got a chance to play a few, and even with Killjoy, I noticed that 40 meters isn't as long as you think it is, right? Especially on a map like Haven, when you are even rotating from, whether that's A to B or C to B, whatever, you kind of get out of your range of your turrets and your bomb bot relatively quick. And so I think Cypher could still be a crucial pick because both have been nerfed. Like it's not like just Cypher took it, right? The only other real viable Sentinel being Killjoy, I feel at the moment. Like if you're gonna have one, I think Cypher is still going to be a very strong pick. Like he gives you so much information with the camera. The tripwires are still a nuisance, but you do have to find a way to stay alive, right? If you die, everything becomes an issue. I'm going to be more excited to see Tim. Like I think when Sky enters the map pool, I know this is going to go two ways here, and we'll just take it both ways. But the one point I want to bring up is when Sky enters the map pool, there may be games where we don't see Sentinels at all, right? You see some duelists, you see a couple of you can see it split up a couple different ways where duelists or Sentinels are not involved. in the game. And maybe that's where it's going. And then you'll see nerfs or buffs to bring them back in because they're not going to want a game without Sentinels being picked. But Sky is going to change things. Her kit, again, I said it last week, it is incredibly unique.
Right.
And maybe good or bad,
And we did
depending
get
on
to
how your
play-
team uses her.
We've played a couple where I've never played as her yet, but with her on my team, and I can already tell you. And now this isn't going to be an issue on a pro level, but a good Sky will make her could hard carry just with the information and how they're using her. A bad Sky will flash you about 1,000 times a map.
Yeah. I've had a chance to play with her, and there's a couple of quirky things to her that I'm sure most people playing Sky for the first few times wouldn't even know. For example, if you throw her bird out, which is the flash that Tim's talking about, the flash that is being memed all over the world right now because it's a long flash. Like, it feels like you are stunned for quite a bit of time. Maybe it's because you see 3 of them back to back to back generally, and you're just stunned forever.
Right.
But if you throw that bird out and it's against a wall where there is a turn coming up where you can split, either going up, if you're playing split and you're going, A, you can either go up ramp or turn in. If you throw the bird against the wall, it understands that you are trying to turn it into the curve, and it catches the wall and automatically turns for you, where you don't have to aim it to do that necessarily. And I found that once I realized that a couple rounds in, I was like, oh shit, this is a little bit easier to use than I thought. You can use this to your advantage depending on where you aim the bird. It catches corners and it'll fling around automatically. And so I think you're right, though. Her kit is going to be an information nightmare for teams with that dog that she can send out. The Seekers, I think, will be one of the best ultimates in the game, especially for retakes, because you will get positioning on players. People have to shoot it, or it stuns you and it goes after you for a long distance. So really excited to see her enter the fold. And I think they announced that it's not too far away. We're maybe just a week out from her being in competitive
I think
play.
I saw it the 16th. So 2 weeks or so, 10 days. I think I saw on Twitter that Riot announced on the 16th because she was delayed coming out. But yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Players are revolting against Icebox.
Look,
a lot of the pro players have come out, and I shouldn't say revolting, but a lot of the pro players have come out and mentioned that don't have some very kind words for Icebox at the moment.
I'm so torn on that, right? Because it's a new map. No one likes new maps. That's just a fact. If Dust 2 wasn't Dust 2 and came out now, people would find a way to just absolutely say it's the worst map ever and what are you guys doing?
Did you not like Ascent when it came out?
I thought Ascent was fine. I thought it was rough, because again, I remember even we were playing it, and we were like, where the hell am I going on this map, right? I remember getting lost on Ascent, and now I'm like, oh, this is only 3 lanes. Okay, I got it. I figured it out. And Icebox, I feel like maybe it's gonna be that same way, but now even then, even from us playing it, we noticed there are just way too many things you have to look at, which is Valorant's problem in map making anyways. In all of their maps, on Split, you go out mid and it's okay, I got to check behind the boxes, in the cubby, ropes, or in the entryway to heaven, whatever you want to call that, right? So it's that's always been their problem. Icebox definitely amplifies it, right? There's a lot more places to look, but
I don't mind the map personally, but I'm actually quite excited to see it in competitive play. I don't mind the map. I don't think it's a terrible map. I can see why there are frustrations with it because it is so different. The verticality and the amount of angles that you're constantly checking. I think they can smooth some of that out over the next couple of weeks here. They'll get a lot of player feedback, and they're going to see trends, and they'll find ways, I think, to clean it up a little bit. But I think the map has potential. I think visually it looks great too. I don't think it's a bad looking map. So I'm excited to see it in pro play. I'm excited to see what they do with it. I'm excited to see how the meta change is different specifically for that map. There's going to be groups that combinations of agents that you just don't see on other maps,
Yeah.
and so that'll be fun.
I think that's ultimately what Riot wants, right? I think Riot wants metas per map, especially on the pro level. You know, it's like, hey, you know, maybe on this map, you know, I was gonna say Jet's not useful, but I feel like Jet's
They
always
don't want a
useful.
static 5 agents on every
Right,
map.
right.
That's what they're trying to avoid, right? They do not want it to be, these are the best 5. This is what you're gonna see, and that's just how it is. I think this is the right way to do it. You know, is make the maps unique enough. Where in this map you're gonna need raises, you're gonna need, jets and omens. We're seeing those on a lot of maps, but like flashes and all that will be more useful. And sky, I think, will be an interesting addition to that map for sure.
Yeah, and that's already in the pool anyway. So we'll see the map soon enough in Pro Play and Sky just the same. Looking forward though for First Strike, as we said, tomorrow the 5th. So by the time you're listening to this, you have Group C and D kicking off. The 6th, you will have the upper finals and lower finals of each group as well. So
Big games tomorrow too, like big teams playing tomorrow.
yeah, I mean you have Sentinels versus Dignitas, Envy versus Spot Up, TSM versus Built by Gamers, and then Renegades versus Slimy. So I mean, a lot of unknowns. You have Group C, right, which was everyone was calling the Group of Death, is kicking off. So get to see who comes out of that. And just a quick update here: Xset versus Luminosity is tied 1-1. So we'll see where that goes. But enough of Valorant. Let's get into some Counter-Strike, because we did have Group C finish up in the Blast Premier Fall regular season. Now, for those keeping track at home, Blast has the most confusing format I've ever seen, where they have like the seasons and the showdowns and the finals and things like that. So
can you give me a little TLDR breakdown of it if you know?
So the way this works is everything's wrapped up now, right? Now you have the regular season, which were into groups. Those created the standings, which then feed into the showdown, which is what you have coming up at the end of the month. Starting the 23rd, you have the Premier Fall Showdown. The showdown consists of like the 16 teams that qualified through either regular season or other invitations and things like that.
Versus the bottom half of this event, right?
Exactly. So there you're going to see guys like Liquid was invited, but like NiP, Complexity, MIBR, Evil Geniuses, that is, FaZe Clan, Cloud9, Furia. You're going to see those guys who from the regular season, okay? That is what will kick off here. The winner of that and the top half of the regular season that we just saw, okay, so the 6 teams there have already qualified for the fall finals in December. So now you have that is at the
So everybody that was basically in the finals for their group moved on to the finals.
And now the 2 will move on from showdown to the finals. So next up that you'll care about is the showdown in a month and then the finals.
You said the top 2 from the showdown will make it to the finals?
Yes, top 2.
Okay.
Top 2. So again, when they first announced it, I didn't understand it, and even now, like Group C finished up, and I like looked at it, and I'm like, "What the hell is going on here?" Like, you really need a flow chart to figure it out. But
I kind of get it after you explained it there, though.
It's a lot of feeding.
You gotta be looking at it. I bet if you're listening to us right now, you're like, "What the are they talking about?"
Because they call it like the regular season, and then you have a showdown, and then you have finals. It's
like the weird names don't help, because like, wait, showdown could be like, isn't that the finals? Or
right? No, so you have a regular season. The showdown is, you think of it like a relegation. Like you can get relegated out of Blast or into the finals, and then you have the finals, which is like your playoffs. That's exactly how it's broken down. So we had Group C finish up, which honestly turned into be one of the more interesting groups to finish up, because you had a
most entertaining group by far. Well, not even close.
Thanks to, Blast should probably be thanking MIBR and G2 for giving every single storyline available going into it. and Furia. So I'm trying to think of some of these games wrapped up the last show. I think we saw like
Yeah,
the first
we
round.
talked about the opening round of Group C.
Yeah.
Briefly.
And then so that ultimately led to Furia versus MIBR, the match of the Brazilians.
The knockout match.
Yeah, the knockout match.
The
So
loser
one
of
had
this
to go
was the
home.
lower round one. Yeah, was going home. So
MIBR ended up taking that 2-1, 16-9 on Nuke, 16-11 on Inferno, and 16-4 on Vertigo.
yeah, and like that's a shocking win in that sense. Now, I don't think as much just because it's also a rivalry, right? And,
Of course.
MIBR just has so much to prove right now. But there was a decent amount on the line for this, right? Like you're not going to the next round. Like there is no tomorrow in that sense for
Right.
you. So
Now, I don't want to take anything away from MIBR, because I would just hate to do that. However, they did look impressive this event, for all things considered. All right, I guess I should say that. All things considered, this ragtag group that they threw together right at the last minute. But I feel like Furia was also just off for this group. This is supposed to be the number one team, one of the number one NA teams, number one in the world, according to the Players Association. And to go 2-0 against G2, a new roster G2, and then going 2-1 against a new roster with MIBR, a little disappointing. Now, they also flew over, so can we finally start the NA jet lag meme up again? Like,
I don't think that's going to work.
Is this what it is? Can we use that as an excuse already? Our first international event back? Maybe?
I mean, is this like that shocking, though, that Furia slips up? Like, I know they were dominating NA, but what have we been talking about with NA? There's only a couple of competitors there.
Right.
And so to dominate the field, yes, it's an accomplishment when you start including like Liquid and EG in there, but it's not earth shattering to do that.
Well, because like MIBR has looked rough, right? But MIBR has looked rough against EU teams, the top teams in the world.
Well, and we haven't seen like this MIBR, right? So this was also different. Like this was the first time this group is also playing together in that sense with limited practice. And so for Furia to lose to MIBR, there's really no excuse to that. Like Furia should have been more prepared, but we've seen Furia like nosedive at times, and I just don't see it. I don't think it's that surprising that they struggled against a team like G2. G2, Tim. This is a top 5 team written all over.
I've never been so happy to be wrong about a move, because I will be the first to admit, not a believer in the NiKo to G2. And I know that we only have one event sample size here to go off of, Anuj, but holy shit, what a sample size. Because G2 looked phenomenal, but then NiKo and his cousin, it was like they were on like some blood level mental bond, because both of them, but NiKo, I mean, dropping a 38 bomb. Come on. Like, new roster, everything is just like the weight has been lifted off his shoulder. He doesn't have to IGL anymore. It's not his fault anymore if things go wrong, and just drops a 38 bomb, excuse me.
In a 16-11 game.
I was going to say, in a game that didn't go overtime.
That's incredible. I mean, those are some stats. You'll just a 135 ADR, like it's just in a 2.0 plus rating. Like those things they don't happen often, right? And you're right, because these two guys looked like they were just on another wavelength. They really shined in different areas, but even in different games, like they just played so well off of one another. It was fun to see that, because it does give you the sense of belief that this is going to like probably work out. Like I don't think this is a one-time thing where they got lucky and have taken people by surprise. Like looking at this roster, this roster has the ability to rise into a number one type status, right? I'm not saying they're going to be number one, but it's not going to be surprise me if they're fighting for that spot, especially if NiKo goes back to the NiKo of old. He was interviewed recently by HLTV, and he talked about the immense pressure that he felt day in and day out because he was constantly scrutinized by everybody. He had taken on this IGL role that he admittedly did not want to do. It was just, there was really no option for him. The pressure was weighing on him from an IGL standpoint. He couldn't focus on his game. He had to change the role that he was playing in order to IGL. So he said it just was too much, and he needed to make a change regardless. And so if this brings back the Nico of old, what we just saw a year and a half or so ago, I mean, Tim, that was the best player that we had seen in, how long, right? The only question was, could he do it on the biggest stage? And I think he also answered that question by, at least in the Boston Major, getting to the finals, right? Regardless of they're not winning it. He was a huge contributor to one of the best teams in the world. So I'm excited for this G2 roster. And the way they put it on Astralis after losing to Astralis in the upper final, I know I'm probably skipping ahead here, but G2 and Astralis matched up in the upper final. Astralis took him out 2-1, and then they had the rematch come up there in the grand final. And I really thought maybe Astralis could be in their head a little bit at that point after just coming off of a win, off of a tough series, right? Like it ended in overtime, tough loss. G2 to bounce back and take them in a 2-0 sweep, that was very impressive to see.
Yeah, like I said, I was completely wrong on Nico moving to G2 for now, because they looked like a team that, I don't know, like everyone was just playing differently. Like even like Kenny S and everything. He was even using a rifle, giving up the op at certain points of the map. Like when was the last time you saw that? Right? Where like Kenny S was kind of relieving the op duty and things like that. I don't know. It looked like a completely different team by adding Nico, which I know seems a little obvious, but like I was not expecting that quick of a turnaround.
Yeah, look what he did today in their 2-0 series. On Dust 2, he put up 27. He was a top frag. He was plus 10, 106 ADR. On Nuke, top frag, 30 bomb that he drops, and that's a overtime, or not an overtime game. That was a 16-13 finish. Puts up 30 plus 11, 101 ADR. Like, talk about Nico of old. Like that's what it used to be, right? As you would see him not just above the next guy, but like well above everybody else on the server. And for Astralis is not going to take this too hard, right? Xyp9x is being worked back into the lineup. Xyp9x struggled in this event, although he had some moments of greatness. You saw a couple of 1v1 situations, 2v1 situations that he was able to pull off, and it kind of reminded you of the Xyp9x of old. He struggled, for the most part. He had a tough time today in the finals, and I think they know they just have to work him back in, right? He's got to get his reps in like you would in any other game or sport. He's got to get some competition under his belt. For him, it's like stiff legs. He's been gone for a while. And so you hope he regains his form, because I don't think they have any backups anymore, do they? Aren't both of them gone?
I think so. I think you're right. Now. I think they're back to let me look. I'll pull it up right here right now.
We know S-Tag's obviously gone. I think Pupsky's gone too.
He's still on their roster as far as Liquipedia is concerned. But he was also owning that fake roster, so maybe
playing with no reg still.
Yeah, he's signed with no reg. Yeah, so I think it's great just to kind of see Nico back. Let me ask you this, because he has been very vocal about not being IGL anymore, right? And how it's completely, he didn't want to do it at first, and now it's kind of like the chains are off of him, if you will. And we've heard that before, where it's like, that's always a scapegoat for guys who are performing well. If they're IGL, people always give them the benefit of the doubt of like, well, they're an IGL though, right? An IGL shouldn't top frag. It's okay if they're bottom fragging because they're IGLing. They're doing multiple things. Normally, I view that as an excuse because we have had IGLs top frag and things like that. But I will say this, an IGL is almost a thankless job. And this is why it can turn into a frustrating moment, because when things go right, you hardly ever hear, wow, what a great execution by the IGL. What a perfect call. But if you're getting rolled, they're normally the first person to blame. And it's also frustrating on their part, right? With Nico, and we've seen it with Nico, in my opinion, doesn't handle like stress and losing very well, right? Like you can physically see it take it out of them when they're struggling. And for an IGL, and this happens on a pro level, a pub level, whatever. I don't care who you are. This happens if you're quote unquote the IGL, right? You're giving orders. You're telling people to go long B, whatever, right? Oh, let's do a long cat execution. It happened the other day in Valorant with us, right? Some guys doing a call strat to hit A on bind. And what happens? They're like, what happened to you guys on short? Well, bro, like they smoked us off and killed us. And like that IGL at that moment who made that call is instantly frustrated with everyone because in his mind, they called the perfect shot. And we're the ones who screwed it up, right? It's your teammates are the ones that's screwing it up. So if you just take away that one more thing that can mentally get to Nico and just take it off his shoulders, I think he's going to be fine.
Like the IGL not being able to frag is an excuse. Like they just can't. They're not expected to be top frag either, right? Nobody's saying that. Like your IGL needs to be your top frag. It's just not an excuse for an IGL to like consistently be bottom frag, and then in some cases like well below everybody else.
Right.
That excuse doesn't fly anymore. But it's always going to take a toll on you. It is a hard job to IGL. It's a lot of homework and preparation more so on your end. And then even in the game, your mind is not just focused on that one thing that Nico does best, which is go kill, right? And so I think what he said was valid, and I liked that he admitted to it, right? Like the pressure, like in that situation, it got to me. Like it was a lot to handle. It affected my performance, and I knew I needed out. And that's a big step to do that because look at he bettered his situation. Technically, he went to a team that was ranked a little bit lower, but he's going to play in a comfortable situation. He's going to go play with his cousin Hunter. He's got a capable leader in Nexa who is willing to take input from Nico mid-round. And if Nexa needs some help in a situation, Nico would be there to offer it, right? Because he has that leading experience. You have experience on that team with somebody like Kenny S, who's been there, who's done it all, who's won trophies, and who also I think kind of realizes that this is not like his team in the sense of from a leadership standpoint, sure, but not so much from like I need to carry. So I think there's a great definition of roles and balance within this roster, and so he found the flaw in what he felt was holding him back, and he made the move. And I think this is going to be. I want to pull the tape for what I said last week, but I think this is going to be like a 100% slam dunk for them. Like this is going to be a deadly team.
Yeah, I'll give you credit for it. I don't know what you said either, but I know I said like I was not 100% believer that going from FaZe to G2 was going to make all that much of a difference for him personally. But like I said, small sample size. But if this group stage was anything, it's G2 has
just
to be
the start,
happy.
right?
Yeah, like G2 has to be quite happy with their move. All right, so there's Group C. It's wrapped up. Like I said, we'll have time to talk the showdown, as they're calling it here, because that's not till beginning of next month, I believe. So we have a while there. Before we get into e-news, just another reminder, no show on Monday. We will both be out. So let's get into some e-news and wrap that up. Not a lot to get to. A slow couple. I don't know maybe esports is taking a backseat to the presidential election.
We did the show on Monday, so that never helps for the Wednesday show. We're like really left with a day of a news cycle to kind of dig up some dirt for you guys. But yeah, definitely one of the lighter news is. Hey, not a bad thing though.
Not a bad thing.
Get on with your day after this.
Valorant game director Joe Ziegler mentions in an interview that their next goal is to get the map pool to 7 maps. Do we have an ETA though?
No, but they said that they bumped up that priority from where it was like just even a couple months ago. He acknowledged that 4 maps was way too light, for the last few months, and he said even 5 is not enough. From a competition standpoint, they want to have best of 5 series, and they think having a map pick situation similar to Counter-Strike is going to benefit them. So look, they moved it up on their priority list, and if it means, you know, in a couple of months we have 2 new maps potentially relatively close to one another, at least on the PTR, like that's exciting because that's big. We complain about that all the time.
Yeah.
So for
Well, it's
you and
also
me,
fun
like,
too. Like we were talking about Icebox. It's okay to have a less than amazing map if you have 7 or 8 maps. When you have 4 or 5, not so much.
yeah, especially when Split's one of them already, right? So, you know, I think you expand the map pool, and even if the maps aren't perfect, you can touch them up. Counter Strike's proven that that's okay to do. You know, 90% of Counter Strike's maps have been reworked 100 different ways. So, like, not a big deal to release something that's not perfect, but if it's like good enough, you're going to be fine, and it'll make the community happy.
Speaking of a new map, Apex Legends Season 7 kicks off introducing a new map called Olympus. I don't play the game anymore, but I will say this. It does look cool. Not going to download it. I'm not going to install the game again, but the map does look cool.
Not yet. Like, not until I show you some sort of clip or something of me playing, or you see me and
I
a
don't
couple of the
think so.
boys online.
I
like,
uninstalled Warzone again, so.
Well, Warzone, I think we're kind of at the end of the cycle now, you know, like
It's just-
Halloween event's over. We'll
BRs
see.
are, it's going to be a tough sell.
But new map for Apex Legends, new hero, new weapons being introduced. You know, the game's still going strong. There's still a pretty massive player base for it. I think we knocked the esports side for kind of where that's sitting a little bit right now. And even that's still, you know, done okay from a BR terms.
It was just
but
from where it was, right? Like it had
it all.
it
at
had
one
it all.
point.
It was there, right? And people were pretty much just saying, take advantage of me, Apex. And they were like, not until we're married. And they waited too long.
Like Warzone's kind of found sustainability, right? Like the numbers have been pretty good throughout
Right.
for Warzone. Apex had this early surge, and then they didn't do enough, I think, early on to keep that player base, and maybe even the esports side was a little slow to kick off, like really kick off initially. But look, it's you know, season 7, that's an accomplishment on its own. New map, you know, new stuff for you guys to go play with. So if you're looking forward to something new to do, you can definitely hop on and join the fun there.
In other news, we have General Sniper. This would have been a Yikes of the Week, but because we're not doing Yikes of the Week because we won't have a show, then we're going to throw it here in E-News. General Sniper was signed by Cloud9 as a streamer and then was let go from Cloud9 as a streamer. Unfortunate event here, Anuj, because it was due to his age. He's only 14, and Riot would not. I mean, he's a League of Legends and everything there, so somehow that trickles down into like streamers as well. Can't do it. So Cloud9 signed him, then was told about the rule and said, "Sorry, kid. Maybe in a couple of years."
That's just unfortunate.
That sucks.
Like, that just sucks. That's just like, yeah, you feel bad for him. And, you know, the org obviously did not do this intentionally.
No, I
for
mean,
whatever
even-
reason. This is the
Yeah.
decision that had to be made.
And
But
for people saying like, well, Riot's just being big jerks, it makes complete sense when you think of you don't want orgs signing these 13, 14-year-old prodigies as a streamer, quote unquote, and then just all of a sudden holding them under your org until it's time to bump them up to academy or whatnot. Like you,
yeah, you should have found a way to do what FaZe did and just lie about their age.
100%. Or just don't make an announcement, right? You don't always have to make an announcement. Just pay him. Just let it go, right? Pay for his silent loyalty. That's all you need. All you need. I also have one more Yikes of the Week on here. Since we're not doing a Yikes of the Week, can I just throw it on here?
Please do.
The former, well, I guess he's not the former. He always is. The founder of Evo. I can actually pull him up on Twitter. Which one is this? Anyways,
Harassing, like sexually harassing.
yes.
people, right?
Yeah. Joe, I forget his last name though, so I just want to. Joey Cuellar, however you say that last name. Anyways, you're absolutely right. Former founder of founder of Evo, no longer with Evo because he was busted for sexually harassing boys and young men into looking at his penis and, everything else that the fighting game community was getting in trouble for a couple months ago. Anyways, so he was under huge fire, right? Deleted all his Twitter account. Or he deleted not his Twitter account, but all his tweets. Went completely silent. He made a statement at the time. Like, remember, he was very unapologetic of everything. Like, he was kind of standing his ground, saying, like, yeah, well, what are you going to do about it? So he deletes all his tweets. Has been silent for months. Yesterday, Anuj, this man finally breaks his silence. What do you think he said?
MAGA.
Almost. He just says, vote. Like,
he's trying to, you know what, Tim? He's targeting the youth in a different way now.
Comments have been disabled on the tweet, but I just thought the power of, like, he got so caught up in all the people telling people to go vote and the commercials and the phone calls and the text messages. He was like, you know what? I know I've been publicly silent about sexually harassing little boys, but damn it, people need to go and vote. And so all this guy tweeted for the first time in months is vote.
Probably won't hear from him again anytime soon.
I mean, like, what? I saw that. I saw him pop up on my timeline. I was like, oh my God.
It's crazy. Like, I mean, is he in trouble with, like, is he under police investigation or anything like that? Or
I would have to imagine.
a lot of these guys kind of just like lost their job
right
for like being a pedophile or whatever they were doing, Like,
yeah, like you didn't really hear anything afterwards. They were just kind of like,
these,
yeah,
these like crimes
we're gonna
too. That's
we're
why
gonna
you're in
fire
trouble.
him, but
Like,
that's it.
kind of curious what's going on with that. Maybe we'll look into that.
Yeah. So who knows? But either way, just know, pedophile or not, he wants you to go vote. So I guess there's that. All right, well, that will do it for this episode of The Center Ring. It's episode 286. It's done. It's in the books. Thank you so much for listening, whether you skipped around or listened to the whole thing. If you're in chat, thank you. Love you. We will be back next Wednesday to record live on Twitch or YouTube or whatever you want. So be around then. Follow us on Twitter at The Center Ring. Again, no show on Monday. We are both busy with weddings and tearing down the office and all that fun stuff. So wish me luck. The goal is to have everything plugged back in and working, which sometimes with computers that just doesn't happen for whatever reason. So Godspeed to me. Godspeed to you, Anuj. Weddings are always super fun.
Yeah, it's like weird with the COVID wedding. So
Yeah.
it'd be small. It'd be a fun time. Just happy for her to get her life going with him.
That's
so.
right. Congratulations. So yeah, we'll see you guys in a week. We'll be in Discord. We'll be hanging out, playing some games. So hit us up if you see us. But until next time, I'm Tim for Anuj. We'll see ya.